Oh, here's just a picture of the family. When I was reading about what Laney said, you know, even before she was 5 years old, she felt she knew that she had anxiety or stress. She always, I would yell, will you smile? Just smile. I mean, we go to Kmart and get the picture taken, and it was like, you're forgetting to smile, just smile. This was Laney when she was 18. So in a glamour shot, as us parents, a lot of us were going through this journey at the same time and holding each other up. Mortality rate, there you know, more suicides and more overdoses, and my daughter was one of them this year, that actually brought the age level down. That, you know, no, it's we have less people this year than last year because of that specifically. So this was written 3 or 4 years ago when she was doing some recovery work. And that was part of her recovery work, was to write her life story. It's nice that I have it, because it's reality instead of me making up what Laney thought or how she felt or making assumptions about it. It's nice that it's in her words and she can speak for herself instead of me speaking for her. Through all of her writings, what I'm understanding is how much made her sad or anxious, which we never really addressed because I didn't understand. One of the first things she said was, when I was a child, we took many vacations, we had a close family, and I was a happy child. But looking back, I was worried about things that were very small, and I believe it was due to my anxiety even as a small age. My father went to jail for numerous DWIs, and this made her very sad. School was fun in my grade school years, except I never felt like I fit in with the other students and struggled to make friends. She says, I didn't start using in grade school, but I started experimenting with cigarettes at age 12. So I guess I did start at a young age if you consider cigarettes a drug. My loneliness and frustrations grew into high school years. She was diagnosed with hypothyroidism when she was a freshman in high school, and she says it made me very tired and uninterested in matters. And then she said she started using marijuana at 16. And the combination of her low thyroid and smoking marijuana just made her not care about anything. My father had quit drinking. I had an understanding at an early age of what it was and the principles. So she grew up in a 12-step house. It wasn't like she didn't understand and know what addiction was and how that worked. Under any circumstances, the power of the family addiction is stronger than anything. There is no question in my mind that plays out as it plays out in her story, which you know I'll talk about in a minute. I was just a hard-headed teenager that wriggled around any rules or problems that I felt somehow my parents set. My father started drinking again when I turned 18. She decided to start partying with him. So she's talking about now, she had a possession charge, and she ended up in St. Louis County Court program at 20 years old. Now, this is the same time her dad's gone to prison for DWIs. So she's talking about, she talks about in drug court. It's the hardest program I ever had to do. We had counseling 3 times a week, probation once a week, and court every Friday. I got busted drinking in the beginning of the program, which also led me to getting a scram that monitored my alcohol. Like I said, it was a very hard program, which made it harder. Where she was living, she had to drive to St. Charles to get her bracelet read 1 week, but she did it. And she says, funny thing though, I was sober and feeling good. So she has that memory. She has the memory of feeling good. I was still working. My program lasted 10 months, and the day I graduated, I got drunk. My whole clean time down the drain, and without a care, I was beat down and ready for a clean life yet. She talks then about a couple she lived with, a boyfriend's parents, and they drank all the time. And she's talking about that. She says, I was living with Danny's parents and drinking a lot. I remember feeling like I couldn't keep up with the drinking going on in that house. My body wasn't built for it. And then her dad committed suicide in 2010. And it was a game changer, obviously. So she's talking about when she found out, her grandpa called her and who she was very close to. She talks about, I pulled over and called my doctor, her first phone call after she found out her dad had killed himself, had hung himself. I immediately pulled it together and called my doctor, told him what happened, and asked for Xanax. That's the part that I can never reconcile, is you just said it, even though you know it's going to end bad, your brain does not go that direction. Even when you know, like you said, you still can't make another choice. The pain that I can't begin to explain from losing my dad so abruptly, but at this time, it was way too painful for me to deal with. She went through a straight of shock, and her dad was everything to her, is what she's saying. She talks about she feels like she's just dreaming. It can't be true. I miss you and love you, Daddy. I must move forward. So I'll see you when I get to heaven. You're missed dearly now. My pill addiction grew out of control. I even started stealing Vicodin from the family she was living with. So now we're talking about, she's probably like 21 years old. I started going to meetings at Hampton House. I met a girl there at Harris House at a meeting, and we went back to her place, and this is when I tried smoking meth for the first time. I fell in love right away. I love how she's not passionate about anything else in her life. There is not one other thing that I can say Laney was passionate about. She really liked Tupac. That was probably, and Billie Holiday. So music, and her dad was a musician, so she grew up around blues music. So if she was passionate about anything, it would be about music. I continued going over to the girl's house for a few more times, smoking more and more meth. A lady I bought pills from had her nephew up from California. I smoked meth with him and decided to drive to California and move there over smoking meth one time with this guy. Genuinely, that's exactly how it went down. He wrecked her car, and she got the money from the insurance company and went to California. And this is how she describes her California experience. I was almost 3,000 miles from home and being held hostage in a hotel room by a tweaker. She called me in a panic one night, begged me if she could come home. I got a plane ticket that was leaving like 3 hours later. I was always waiting for that next opportunity where this might be the time, like every other parent. I was never going to give up, but I was also, I had done 12-step for years. I didn't want to enable. I was trying to find that fine line in between, making sure that if she wanted to get clean, she had an opportunity, that she wasn't going to hit a brick wall, but I wasn't going to enable just doing it. I had bought a little house and a car from my insurance money. I lost everything but my life. So I'm back in St. Louis now with my tail between my legs, more broken down and addicted now on meth. I couldn't take my new meth addiction, so I decided to check myself into Harris House. The big game changer for her at Harris House was that an older psychiatrist that was there messed her up bad. I remember going down to Costco like once a week. He would change her meds once a week. And then, which again I think is a very common story, he didn't know what he was doing. There is no way this man knew what he was doing. And I was trusting the system that I shouldn't have trusted. He was not a staffer. He came in and was an independent. And there was some signs, just because he was older and, but I didn't like from the beginning the way he talked to her. This non-compassion that somehow if you're just a hard ass on these people, and that if you just, I've heard so many times, if she just do what she's supposed to do, I don't understand that when she's crawling and screaming, and how do you think she's capable of doing what she's supposed to do? The part that they never address is the mental health piece, whatever that is. And so she became like a caged lion. She was literally screaming and running, and they called me and said, can you come down and help us with this? Well, the Harris House staff was dealing with something that they hadn't created. The psychiatrist was the one that had created this meth. She says, I felt like such a failure. My dad's brother, after my husband committed suicide, or Laney's dad committed suicide, his brother Paul also started using heroin. And so this is when she's speaking with this. So my dad's brother, Uncle Paul, was indulging in a heroin addiction when I got back, when she got out of Harris House. I didn't do it all the time, but I knew how to get it for him. He would take money out of Grandpa's account, and then he was paying for the drugs and then also helping her because she wasn't working at the time and she had just got out of Harris House. I was so depressed and I thought, what the hell, my life is already messed up anyway, that she uses a different word, and I really can't take any more. Let me check out with heroin. I'm 27 and she's 26, her friend. She'd been shooting heroin for about 5 years. She also had gone through drug court. I never joined her until my uncle and I started bonding over heroin. I asked her to shoot me up one day. She did, and it felt so good. Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. I wanted to die inside. I succeeded as my heroin addiction grew. I died. That's what she's talking about, her ODs. She'd go downstairs and to bring a chair up, and next thing I knew, she was dead on the floor. Well, that's pretty much the patterns. It just the way it went. But actually, I never meant to die the first 3 times. The 4th time I did mean to die then, and she's 27 now. I slit my wrist and took a whole bottle of Tegretol. She was in the ICU. You know, she had so many hospital visits, as many people do. 50, 80, I don't know. I didn't count. She was living on the streets for 6 months. I started selling ice for this Brian guy that she hooked up with, and she said I was using more than I sold. The stuff he had sold me tasted weird, my stomach was hurting, and it was a powdery substance. I know it was all saving my life from the devil himself. She's in and out of the hospital daily, weekly, whatever that looks like. Still to this day, I don't know exactly what it was. I just know my liver was failing. I was sick all the time and just wondering why. I think back to a thing I didn't notice previously. She tried to connect with a police officer that she had known most of her life. At this point, though, they're all looking at her, and me too, I guess, as, you know, she's mentally ill, she's crazy, she's high. She jumble up all this stuff, but she talks about how all this stuff just was coming to her, and she felt like she wanted to do something about it. And she kind of got on a mission that she wanted to get the drugs stopped in St. Louis. But at this point, whatever she'd been using, her health was horrible. Her mental health, she wasn't stable. And that's kind of the end of her writing. Now we're at a place, she's 30 years old. She goes into treatment at Bridgeway, and one of her pieces of, she went to Bridgeway 3 times. 3 times was unsuccessful. She had gotten a verbal fight with one of the counselors there. It wasn't appropriate. She needed to leave. They were going to transfer to the outpatient program, and I'm thinking, well, I said to him, I said, if she can't be successful in the inpatient program, how's she going to be successful in the outpatient program? You know something's not right, and there's really, you feel like it's hopeless. You need the medical experts. You need the people that can deal with this thing, and it's just a business. It's not, you know, and I don't want to accuse them all of that, because it's just not nice. There are people out there trying to help. I had done this to her since she was little. I said, you write a contract up, you write up what you think is going to be important for you and I to do to be able to be successful at this. So after being homeless, I wanted to give her another shot at it. And so, because she was not allowed to be in my house if she couldn't use in my house. So she chose to be homeless instead of live there, and you know, it's the same thing of many days. How can a parent let their kid be out on the street? It's horrible. It's horrible on her. It was horrible on me. It was just horrible under any circumstances. She had wrote the contract. We were going to give it a shot. She couldn't do it. She started using them again immediately. Was back living on the streets, and this time it was really bad. Her mental health was so bad that she was out whatever community she happened to be in at the time. There was always police intervention. People were reporting her. It just got worse and worse. Her mental health she was off the rails. I don't even know how to describe it. It was horrible. My biggest fear was she was going to kill herself, kill somebody. It was so dangerous out on the street. She had been raped numerous times. She was being abused all the time. She had dramatically lost weight. She was just headed. I figured she wasn't going to make it out of that. She was just spiraling down. She had referred to in her story about we had gone over at one point in time to Places for People. And she started showing up there occasionally. She would call me from Places for People occasionally. We had tried to have her work through them, but she would never stay long enough or there. Again, it was real erratic mental health wise. And so they had accepted her into the night program. So now she's staying at St. Patrick's Center, and the requirements are that they be, working. They can't use why they are there. So she was there a few weeks, maybe even a month. And this is, I guess, 2 years ago. Yeah, it'd be 2 years ago. She's around 30 years old. And she OD'd at St. Patrick's Center, so they had to kick her out because that's one of the rules. That didn't mean that she couldn't still go there for meals. She could still show up for meals. She's had 10, 20 court dates that she's either missed or showed up to. I had got a lawyer who didn't understand anything about any of it. I mean, the way they just try to push it, we'll get her in drug court, she'll be fine if she just does what she's supposed to do. Again, how many times had I been told that? If she'll just do what she's supposed to do. And so I addressed with him the mental health side, but we wouldn't listen to me. I mean, that's always been my relationship with lawyers for my husband and my daughter. It's like, look, I'm not telling you how to do your job, but you have to listen about the medical side of this. You have to listen to the mental health side. You keep looking at like the addict's just supposed to snap out of it and get themselves clean and get through the court processes. That story's every time, I think. She always had enough common sense at certain times to make something happen, to make something work, like getting in off the streets or, I don't know, whatever. She completely had lost any sensibility about how the courts worked, why anything worked it is. So one day, it was right after she had this screaming session in court, and she said, I'm just firing my lawyer. And the judge says, you can't do that. You can't just fire your lawyer. We're in this middle of this process. This is like 3 years in. I will not drop your lawyer. You would have to be reassigned or something. So she said, well, I'm not working with him anymore. So the best thing that ever happened was a public defender for her. And the gentleman that took her case on, she was out on the streets again. She'd come stay with me occasionally. He called me and he said, I can't represent her. She's not mentally capable of doing this. It's been proven. The judge everybody knows it. Everybody that sat in court with her any day knew she wasn't capable of it. They made a appointment with a psychiatrist, place called Metropolitan Psychiatric Center, which is over in mid-St. Louis, and if she would be willing to go get a complete psych eval, then that could be part of the court process. So I said, look, if you're going to do this, you come home. let's get you as stable as we can get you. Let's try to not use, just don't use in my house. I hate to tell you, you got to go use somewhere else, but you're not using it in my house. She was willing to do that. She went it was a 2-day psych eval. One day she was there like 5 hours. The next day she was there 4 or 5 hours. That was the first that I thought, this may be the beginning of something that I might have this much hope now, that there might actually be something about this that could look different. Somebody paid attention. And it was the public defenders that paid attention. So they ruled her incompetent, that she was not able to understand the concept of her legal charges or any consequences of it. So she fought that. I was begging everybody to pay attention, to say, rule her incompetent, please. That's the only thing that I think is going to get us anywhere. She did a second psych eval. That was also ruled incompetent. The courts, and this always takes, it'd be nice if it could happen in 2 days, right? But, how many times have we all hung on the words, there's a bed open somewhere, you're just like, this is it, this is going to be the time. When they say there's a bed open, we drove to Springfield, Missouri, there was Branson, there was 20 different places that there's a bed open, we can make this happen now. So, I never saw myself as a person who would escalate to the point of wanting to kill somebody or what. We were going to kill each other, and that was another reason why she couldn't be in the house when she got high. We were going to die. Both of us were going to die because I wasn't going to give in. If she started in on me, I would fight and I would kill her before she killed me. And I consider myself an extremely sane person, even in that moment. But that's what you're living in. So that's what it came down to. So if I knew I was going to take the chance on her walking in and taking a shower or eating a meal or sleeping in her bed or a couch, the door got locked, it got barred, I put a bar in the door. She stood on a viaduct, and 20 police cars, 2 ambulances later, right up by my house. I knew it was her. Janet and my sister and I just happened to be driving past there and saw the ruckus, and then I got home and I turned around and I said, I just knew it was Laney. You just knew it because Laney wasn't home. So it's like, that's Laney up there. Whatever just happened. Either a car's hit her or she's run out in traffic or she's going to jump off the viaduct, whatever. Well, sure enough, when I got up there, she was in the back of an ambulance and she was trying to reason it out and tell him she wasn't going to jump. She just really wanted to stand there, which may have been the case because she'd been standing in the middle of the street a lot, on and off. So, and the police would shoo her off the street and say, you can't be over here, you got to stand on your own property, So whatever the case was, but we were able to do a 96-hour on her. The police told me just to go to do a 96-hour on her at the hospital and see if they would at least hold her, which they didn't want to. The hospitals it's always the hospitals and the police that are having to deal with whatever that looks like, and they don't want to. They're not going to get paid. They're not, she hadn't had insurance. So they held her for a day, and then I told them that she, had a bed. So that Monday morning she went in, and then she was there 5 months at Metropolitan Psychiatric Center, the same place that she had the eval, which is a state-run psych hospital. They're treating for mental health, but the priority is that they can pass the test to get them back in the court system. But they are being treated. So I'm always curious about that piece about everyone thinking if they just stop using, they would be okay again. Well, that's not the truth at all. And the treatment for me then at that point, once I've learned a lot of things, the treatment for me and while she was in there was now our work, Laney's going to be having you feeling things again correctly the way you want to feel them. You know about being kind, you know about compassion, you know about all these things, but I think we need to re-practice them. Our relationship started building again. We hadn't had a good relationship for a few years, I guess probably since her dad died, mainly. And years before. And so this was an opportunity for us to be two grown women starting a relationship and figuring out what that looked like. And that felt healthy. That felt, both of us felt like we had a shot at something that maybe we could take advantage of. So she finished her 5 months. Places for People took her on directly out of there. They were a saving grace. The model, the Places for People model, I can't say enough good things about it. She became part of the FACT team, which is the Forensics Assistive Community Team, specifically for people that had been jailed or because of her homelessness and because of her mental health. The one thing that did disturb me, the doctor didn't write it up that she still needed mental health. When she left 5 months at a psychiatric unit, it was still only that she had drug abuse, that there was nothing else. So Places for People, had to make that happen because she was still mentally ill. She still hadn't, she wasn't stable. She was completely at risk for going right back to the streets. So they took care of that, thank goodness. And then they have a whole team of people. So she had all this success. She got a job she turned 32 the end of March of this year. And we did the birthday cake. It just felt so normal. I don't know if I like the word normal, but it felt so average. It felt so non-dramatic. It was just a birthday and a birthday cake, and she was healthy, and she wasn't using at the time. And one agreement we did do, which I lived by because it kept me in check, was a $20 pee cup from, I don't know, I guess I should call it a drug test, not a pee cup. But it's amazing what it could do for both of us. It kind of kept her honest about using in the house. And it kept me from, because sometimes she'd just look high from her meds. Her real meds, and I'd say, are you high? Will you go pee? And she'd, yeah, no problem. I mean, it kept us both honest. It was worth the money to me for $20 to not accuse her of stuff or not I'll go neurotic and go looking through my house or whatever. So it was working. Shortly after her birthday, she got a job at McDonald's and was working at McDonald's. She had such anxiety and fear about what would that look and feel like. She hadn't worked in years. Would it be okay? Could she deal with people or conflict or, coworkers, people coming into work? It was so great that they gave her the opportunity to do it. She was fine. It worked perfectly. She came home, she was so excited. I mean, her first day maybe was stressful, but they were great. They did the training with her. She had no trouble doing the work. Even if they did, they gave her more training. They treated her as a human being. And so that was amazing. It was the first possibility that, she was going to get back on the road to having her own money. And we had agreed that once she got a job, her grandfather had left her some money, and so that we tried to find a used car and have her start driving again, which to me was, I couldn't even imagine, but she was healthy enough to do it. So we went and took care of all that in a couple of days, and she was driving again. This is like May of this year. It was just I couldn't believe we were there, from knowing she was going to die on the street to a year later, getting the right help, getting the right mental health help, Places for People, having them on her roster and her getting continual support, her getting a job within a year of her being in the psychiatric hospital, and driving. Then the horror came, and that was the piece of, I don't know if it was the freedom, or I don't think it was necessarily stress. She knew all her tools. She just chose to not use them, and I think her addiction won. So June 29th of this year, I know she had used at least once the week before because I had asked her to do a pee test or a urine test, and she tested hot for meth. My regret is that, because I looked at her and I said, what are we going to do about this? And we didn't do anything that day. And I think that's my biggest regret, is we knew what we knew and we still chose not to do any. We didn't take it seriously enough that day. And a week later, she went to bed at 8 o'clock at night, said goodnight. We called ourselves the old grannies or old ladies because we both went to bed about 8 o'clock. She used that night, and I found her on the floor the next day, and she had OD'd. So I felt like the last year, first of all, I was just grateful that I had managed to have an adult relationship with my daughter. What a blessing. That I had seen her. I don't know if I could say she was ever truly happy, but her getting a job and driving again was about the happiest I had seen her in years. It was a major accomplishment. You know, I didn't have Narcan in the house. She chose to use again. I wasn't her safety net that time when she OD'd. And that was the end of her story.